Hello and happy Tuesday, which is of course my book reviews day. And today I would like to talk to you about The King Killing Queen by Shawn Speakman. This grimdark high fantasy novel is about young Sylviana, or Sylvie, who discovers that she is the heiress to a throne and is thrust into an adventure to reclaim her throne, clear her name, and eventually save the day. I will talk more about the plot in a minute, but first, I want to admit fully up front that I'm a bit insulted by this novel. Mostly because it's a major sense of deja vu. Now, understandably, there are only so many stories that can be told. Every book you're going to read is probably going to remind you to some degree of another book. I mean, if you take everything down to the bare bones, there are only, so many different stories. For example, Terry Brooks, who is like a mentor for Shawn Speakman and an employer, because Shawn Speakman runs his webpage, started out his Shannara series with the Sword of Shannara, which was basically just a retelling of Lord of the Rings. But it's what you do with those stories that define you and your legacy. Terry Brooks took those building blocks, those Lord of the Rings building blocks, and used to craft this massive world and build it all his own. But the reason I'm insulted about The King Killing Queen is because the deja vu is to Shawn Speakman's previous novel, The Tempered Steel of Antiquity Grey. So, I'm actually going to give you two book reviews here, in a way. I've already reviewed Tempered Steel of Antiquity Grey by itself, but after having read The King Killing Queen, I feel that I cannot talk about one without talking about the other. So, let me give you a basic plot description, no spoilers of course, but a basic rundown or synopsis of what you're going to read with both novels. Both novels feature a strong young female protagonist who discovers in the early chapters that her lineage and her family is not what she had thought. And by the end of the opening chapters, she has a brand new last name and a new lease on life. She has a new purpose, a new future, a new destiny. But unfortunately, things take a turn for the worse when a very close mentor or family figure is tragically killed within the opening chapters. And then your protagonist, young female protagonist, finds herself on the run, having to clear her name and having to ultimately save the day. But to assist her on her quest is a family heirloom that was passed down to her, whether it be a giant mech or a magic sword. But she's not alone on her journey. To assist her, she's accompanied by several ragtag adventurers, including I kid you not, a small flying adventurer in the form of a flying soccer ball in Antiquity Grey, or in the form of a flying little fey creature in King Killing Queen. She's also assisted by a companion who was previously thought to be an enemy. This adventure is going to take many twists and turns as she expands upon the world itself. She is going to encounter a perfectly timed mythical creature in both novels, and ultimately it's going to end in a cliffhanger that's going to lead you up to the sequel. And man, every step of the way, I kept thinking, I've read this before, because I had. And now, I wholly admit I am being unfair. These are not the exact same novel. I mean, if you boil it down to its natural building blocks and roadmaps, yes, there are a lot of similarities between the two of them. But it's not as if he simply just, changed it from a sci-fi to a fantasy setting. There is a little bit of different world building in there itself. But here's what I think ultimately happened. A couple of years ago, Shawn Speakman wrote The Tempered Steel of Antiquity Grey, and he said, you know what? I think this is going to be the next Red Rising. He wanted to get that Pierce Brown fan base. So he did a Kickstarter. Kickstarter did all right, hit a bunch of stretch goals, and Antiquity Grey was born. Unfortunately, it didn't take off the way he wanted it to. I mean, it was moderately successful for a Kickstarter, but it didn't quite have the longevity that he wanted. So he said, you know what? I'm going to take that. I'm going to strip away some of the sci-fi elements. I'm going to inject it with fantasy elements, and I'm going to try to grab some of that George R.R. Martin fan base. And thus, The King Killing Queen was born. It's very much the same roadmap between both of them. And if you think I'm just being a little dramatic here, let's also look at the map for both of them. So here's the Tempered Steel of Antiquity Grey, which features Earth as it is. You have a little bit of France there. You got a little bit of Spain. You can see the UK there kind of poking through. So there's a nice little map. You're like, oh, okay, I like the little European setting. Now let's look at the map for the King Killing Queen. Let's go ahead and... This one's in full color, which is pretty nice. Well, I just lied. This is in black and white. I believe there's a full color version. Or maybe I'm just straight up a liar. You know what? I think the full color one is the insert that's in Antiquity Grey. But here is the black and white map. You got France, you got Spain, you got the UK, you got Europe. It's the same map. It's like, come on, man. I know what you're doing. I mean, and it wouldn't bother me if I hadn't read Antiquity Grey. And so that's what I'm going to say. I mean, if you've stuck around to the 6.5 minute mark, thank you for watching. I will say, if you haven't read Antiquity Grey and you want to read a fun fantasy title, then yes, by all means, check out King Killing Queen. But unfortunately, if you've already read Antiquity Grey, you don't necessarily need to read this one. Or if you read Antiquity Grey and said, man, I wish there was more fantasy elements, not sci-fi elements, then you're in luck. I'm keeping this spoiler free, but there is a scene later in both novels where, as I mentioned, there is a perfectly timed mythical creature that steps forth into this scene. I mean, he literally took dragon and replaced it with unicorn. It's like, seriously? I don't know. I mean, the novel itself is all right. I mean, the prose, it's decent. I've read worse prose. I will say it's not quite as technically well written as other novels that I've read, but Shawn Speakman's still a better writer than many out there. I mean, it doesn't read like, some cheap YA novel. So to that, I have to give him credit. He does rely upon cliches for his building blocks, but I mean, that was the same with Tempered Steel of Antiquity Grey. One thing I will say is that I don't think we're going to ever see a sequel to Antiquity Grey, even though it was, hinted at in the end, because I think he has pretty much scrapped that idea and moved it over to King Killing Queen, which does seem like it's going to get a sequel, which is fantastic. Both novels did have a prequel novella. There was The Undone Life of Jack Dreth for Antiquity Grey, and there is The Briar Knight. I believe I might have the name of that incorrect. It's something with the Briar Knight, which is a graphic novel for King Killing Queen. I haven't read the King Killing Queen one yet. I did read Antiquity Grey's, and it was just sci-fi Moses. If I read the King Killing Queen's prequel novel, and it's just fantasy Moses, I'm going to be so mad. It's just like, come on, man. I mean, it's all right. I mean, the novel isn't bad. It's not going to be, like I said, it's not going to be the most original thing. I mean, it's not even necessarily original within Shawn Speakman's own bibliography, which is disappointing to say. But you can still buy the novel. Actually, right now through Remote Press, he released the other numbered editions, I believe the trade editions, so you can go out and buy the copy for yourself. I don't know if it's selling as well as he had hoped, so hopefully we do see a further continuation of the story. If not, who knows? Maybe he'll strip it away and suddenly he'll write a historical fantasy novel about a young Jewish girl during World War II who discovers that she's secretly the heiress to the Romanov Empire. I don't know. All I know is if he starts, trying to tap into that, or, tries to get into like the Zane Grey Western series by saying, oh, there's a young farmhand girl who discovers she's the heiress to an oil empire, I'm going to be a bit wary. I mean, listen, the novel, however, itself isn't that bad. It's just, it did me dirty because it was very much in the same vein as Antiquity Grey. Right now, I believe it's still going on. Has it even, it might not, actually, yeah, it has started. I think it might still be going on. I forgot to check. But there is a Kickstarter, I think it's a backer kit, for The Dark Thorn, the definitive edition, which is also by Shawn Speakman. That was his very first novel. He has taken it and he's reworked it. If you do buy this edition, it does have the cover artwork by Magali Villeneuve and interior artwork by Donato Giancola. So I'm going to kind of flip through and show you some of that artwork. Yeah, I mean, the world building's all right. I will say that. I mean, the idea is that the king, this who has passed in the beginning of this novel, that's not a spoiler. I will say, however, real quick tangent. Also, like Antiquity Grey, I found that the title is a little misleading. Antiquity Grey is misleading because her name isn't even Antiquity Grey after the first chapter. She gets her family name back, and that's never her name again. King Killing Queen is misleading because she never kills a king. I mean, it's revealed in the synopsis that the king, Alifair Good, just dies of old age. He was given immortality. That he was born to, that he could never, he could only die from natural death. So that's actually kind of the way of proving who his lineage is that his lineage cannot die. And so Sylvie, apparently has never gotten injured once in her entire life. I don't know. It is what it is. Some of the world building is a little questionable. There's this guy, I don't want to spoil it because it would be spoiler territory, but there's something revealed about him that just doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, I mean, it's a decent world. It's just a world that I've read before. Instead of being sci-fi, it's now fantasy. I will say the cliffhanger was a more dramatic cliffhanger here in The King Killing Queen, but for the wrong reasons. You see, Antiquity Grey actually has a climactic final battle, and so you actually get a full story. And then the cliffhanger occurs, but, you still at least have the full story beyond it. Unfortunately, The King Killing Queen does not have that climactic final battle. And so when you get a cliffhanger, it is, well, but when you get that cliffhanger, you don't really get much of a conclusion. You're kind of left saying, well, I need more. So, I mean, to that degree, I guess, yeah, it's a more suspenseful ending. I don't think it's necessarily a better ending, but it's a suspenseful ending. Oh yeah, you have the hey, look, there I am. There's two Shawn L's. How about that? Which one am I? I don't remember. Is my full name on it, or is it just Shawn L? But anyways, you get all the backers in the back. And, oh yeah, here's the map in color. See, I wasn't lying. There's a color map. Black and white map, color map. It's the same map as Antiquity Grey. You actually have some nice color, a little more details than Earth as it is, but, ultimately the same thing. So, unfortunately, that is what I mainly have to say about The King Killing Queen. It's a decent story. I mean, it's grimdark. I haven't read the novella or the short story that it's based off of. I don't know if she actually kills a king in that one, if it's more fitting to the name and has been adapted and expanded further into the novel. That is in the King Must Fall anthology from Grimdark magazine. I'm actually starting to read that right now, so I'll let you know in a few weeks. But anyways, if you haven't read Antiquity Grey, by all means, check out The King Killing Queen. Like I said, it's not going to redefine the genre or anything. It hits a lot of cliches within the fantasy genre, but it still does it well. It was still an entertaining read. Unfortunately, if you've already read Antiquity Grey, you don't need to read this one, and I'm disappointed to say that. Like I said, I mean, ultimately, I'm disappointed. I'm a little insulted. I mean, obviously some authors, follow the same roadmap for all their novels or many of their novels. Bentley Little, for example, is very well known for having used the same kind of stock characters and the same guidelines for all his novels. It's just that for this one, I was expecting something a little different, especially considering these were consecutive novels, instead of it just being a rehash and, that feeling of deja vu. I mean, literally, when it got to the scene with that mythical creature. I said, you know what? This reminds me of that scene from Antiquity Grey. I wonder if a mythical creature is going to show up. And then it does. And I'm like, okay, yeah. I saw that coming because I've read the novel already. Like I said, I'm not intentionally trying to be harsh. I mean, it's still worth reading. It just might not be worth reading twice. But copies are now available over at grimoakpress.com. Link in the description below if you want to pick up a copy for yourself. This is the fancy numbered edition, but I believe there should be trade editions available as well. And Shawn Speakman's great about signing the trade editions, so you can get a nice signed copy, even personalized, if you will. Or if you do want to pick up a numbered edition, this is very much just speculation, but we are several years past Antiquity Grey's publication date, and you can now buy Antiquity Grey's editions for like 50% off, if not more, through the website. So as much as I hope King Killing Queen doesn't need to go down 50% off, there's always that possibility, I suppose. But anyways, thank you very much for watching. Thanks very much for listening to me kind of rant a little bit about these books. If you want to check out more book reviews or unboxing videos, please consider subscribing to the channel. I do at least one book review a week on Tuesdays, plenty of unboxing videos in between here and there. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you around next time.